The devils of the world come into existence with their names already decided for them, and it is these names that tie themselves into the collective unconscious of humans, and thus, the power of devils are dependent on the people's fear of their name. For example, the idea of coffee could create thoughts of being scalded or burnt, but not much worse than that. So, in turn, a coffee devil would be rather weak, but a car can generate deadly images of being run over or hit, thus the car devil would be pretty strong. But one devil whose strength has been built up since the majority of Part 1 of Chainsaw Man is the big, broken, ballistic bullet bloat bundle, barbarically bringing bloodshed and battlefronts to bystanders, the gun. We interrupt this national emergency to bring to you Dungeon Fighter Online is an action-packed hack-and-slash 2D MMORPG with retro pixel graphics and a ton of content to experience, such as partaking in raids and dungeons either online or with players from all across the world. Along with this, you can choose over 60 class advancements to help suit your playstyle, and like any true action game, Dungeon Fighter Online is lush with beautiful illustrations and animations for each class, as well as offering players complex combo systems that makes any playstyle pack a punch. And as of the most recent event, the level cap has been updated, growing from 100 to 110. And with these new levels comes new main storyline progress, as well as new areas and dungeons, not to mention new level 105 epic equipment for you to obtain. Though, say you wanted to start playing now and experience this new content, well, Dungeon Fighter Online has thought of you as well, with the level 100 warm-up event that can help power level your character to 100, along with allowing you to get more rewards and high-level equipment, plus potions and upgrade tickets. It's basically everything you need for a new character. And to get an even better jumpstart, you can enter the code in the description below to receive 10 life tokens, 50 Remy's Sparkling Touches, and the Funky Avatar set. So please, if anything I've said interests you here today, then give Dungeon Fighter Online a try by using my referral link below. Thank you to Dungeon Fighter Online for sponsoring this video. This video contains spoilers for Chainsaw Man up to the most recent arc in the manga. This includes Part 2. So if you want to avoid spoilers, you have been warned. The Gun Devil is one of the longest looming threats in the main story of Chainsaw Man, being established since Chapter 13 and continuing to exist as a background element in the stories right up until Chapter 79, as well as being one of the major inciting incidents for a majority of the characters to become devil hunters in the first place, and it becoming somewhat of a career goal for most people in the business of devil hunting, ever since the gun made its presence known 13 years prior to the story's beginning. Though, most hunters become disillusioned with the idea of taking it down after a few years in the business, while others stubbornly chase the gun without thinking much of their own life in the process. But before we get too into that, let's understand the meaning behind its name and design. So, the Gun Devil's name is pretty blunt and to the point, as they have no real identity outside of being the Gun Devil, as far as we know. They were given the name because they are the embodiment of the collective fear of guns created across the world, be it hoplophobia or the general mental images that guns generate just by existing. And they were assumedly created after an increase in the arms market due to the rise of devil attacks across the world, as people were buying them en masse to defend themselves, though, as a result, an equal rise in gun-related violent crime increased across the world, which the media spread like wildfire.
13 years ago, there was a time when the whole world tried to cash in on guns as a countermeasure against the devils. During that period, guns used in crimes and civil revolts increased. Every country's media ended up covering gun violence news heavily, and just when the fear of guns had risen around the world, there was a big terrorist attack involving guns in America. That same day, the Gun Devil appeared. November 18th, 10 a.m. The Gun Devil hit Japan for 26 seconds. Death toll, 57,912. United States, 124 seconds. Deaths, 548,012. Canada, 7 seconds. Deaths, 8,481. Hawaii, 0.4 seconds. Deaths, 780. China, 37 seconds. Deaths, 316,932. Soviet Union, 210 seconds. Deaths, 155,302. Mexico, 2 seconds. Deaths, 6,088. India, 15 seconds. Deaths, 29,950. In about 5 minutes, the gun devil killed almost 1.2 million people and then fell off the face of the earth. To this day, it hasn't been seen since.
Now this ultimately caused a global-wide increase in the fear of guns, which all came to a head on November 18th, as it was the spark that ignited explosive evolution for the gun devil, allowing it to fully take shape, and its design perfectly reflects its relation to the fear of guns, as well as other elements of their character. Starting first with the head of the gun devil being this massive skull with razor-sharp teeth all fused together with the slide and barrel of a hammerless M1911 handgun. The general shape and design of the gun devil skull, like most devils in the series, is inspired by Tsutomu Nihei's Abara and their Gono's transformations. Though, interestingly enough, according to Fujimoto, the head was originally going to be a revolver, but he opted out of that design decision to avoid being compared to the Yu-Gi-Oh card Revolver Dragon, also known as Barrel Dragon in the West, and is the boss monster of Bandit Keith, an ex-American champion who dies when his hand is forcibly changed into a gun by Pegasus after being caught cheating, which, while likely coincidental, actually kinda works with how the gun devil is handled in the series itself. So I can't say if it was intentionally influential, but I thought I would mention it. Another influence that I assume went into the design of the gun devil was the major medical mechanica threat of Fooly Cooly Episode 5, Brittle Bullet. This being a massive hand machine with 5 individual arms, all armed with different massive firearms, who fights with Haruko, one of the major influences for Makima, and causes a massive amount of property damage to the city around them. And Fujimoto has mentioned before that Chainsaw Man is inspired by Fooly Cooly. Now, the arms of the gun devil seem to be a twisted collage of flesh and rifles, with the most noticeable firearms around it being an AR-15, an M16A1, an M4A1, and of course an AK-47. But one interesting aspect of these select weapons is how a majority of them are all iconic American weapons, outside of course, the Russian AK-47. This could be done intentionally because this segment of the gun devil that we see specifically is the American-owned segment, so a lot of the guns would likely be American in design. Now, in a similar manner to the arms of the gun devil, the back of the devil is comprised of similar weapons, though we can only really make out their stocks, so it's hard to tell exactly what they are, as while I do like guns, I'm no Zach Hazard when it comes to identifying them. But due to their placement, I assume their function is like wings, which makes sense as the gun devil is seen floating everywhere it goes. Though, speaking of its body, we also see its fully exposed chest and ribcage, which contains the pained and angry faces of all those that were assumedly his victims, or maybe the souls that they have consumed. And of course, hanging below his body is a dozen massive 50 caliber machine gun bandoliers, which resemble that of hanging disemboweled intestines, which makes sense as the gun devil we see in action in the story is actually roughly only 20% of the devil's actual body, which as I mentioned is noticeable in its design, as while its face and head match up with the very iconic styles of devils in the series, its exposed ribcage and muscle-like features found on its neck and shoulders seem to imply that it is partly a skinless version of the devil, which also makes sense as 63% of the body has been divided among global superpowers while 73% of the body was scattered across the world and is in the hands of multiple devils, with those bits of its flesh being burnt off after its body's first assault. Though these severed pieces I mentioned demonstrate one terrifying property of the gun devil's strength, as every severed piece of the devil was actively trying to regenerate at the same time, and would almost magnetically attract to each other piece, meaning that the gun devil has an insanely powerful regeneration ability, and would have made fighting it very difficult by any practical means. Though devil hunters can use this aspect of the devil's flesh to hunt down other pieces of the gun devil chunks, with them eventually planning to create a large enough piece that would pull towards the main devil's body in general. Which, speaking of, the gun devil has shown itself to be quite a powerful devil in the universe of Chainsaw Man as a whole, as they were able to casually wipe out 1.2 million people across the world in under 5 minutes. And this was all during its maiden attack. and this is partly thanks to its incredible superhuman abilities, starting first with its speed, as the Gun Devil is incredibly quick as a devil. As I mentioned earlier, it was able to travel the globe in 5 minutes, and we know that it touched down in places like America, moving across to the Soviet Union, then Hawaii, Mexico, India, Canada, and then of course, Japan. With each of these countries only being able to measure the time spent with the devil in seconds. Makima even needed the combined efforts of multiple devil abilities all at once in order to properly fight a segment of the body. Though what makes this Gun Devil even more destructive comes from when we actually break down its main ability itself. Upon activation, the Gun Devil can seemingly set both a target and a parameter for its bullets to focus on, and unleashes a cataclysmic hail of lead, which not only kills the set target, but does untold property damage to everything around them. For example, when we first see it activate off the coast of Nikaho, Akita, which, funny enough, is actually Fujimoto's hometown, the Gun Devil opens its attack by first shooting a bullet through the head of every adult male within a 1,000 meter radius of the devil. On top of this, it also targeted any child 0 to 12 years old within a 1,500 meter radius. Though, as we see from its ever-continuing massacre, the devil can also change the target and parameter, as the next group of people were slaughtered by the devil not based on their age or gender, but instead their month of birth, and they were shot through the heart instead of the head, with the devil targeting anyone born in January, February, March, May, June, August, September, November, or December. The attack excluded those born in April, July, and October, which is interesting because it makes it unclear if there's any real limitations to this power. But the reason those months in specific were excluded for this scene in specific is actually a Japanese pun associated with the numbers those months are tied to. April, of course, being 4, and of course tied to death, July being 7, meaning not or doesn't work, and 10 being October, means gun. So, altogether, you can roughly make a sentence that can be understood as not dead because gun doesn't work, which I think is kind of cute. But it does raise the question if this limitation applies to all of the Gun Devil's attacks, or if it's just this specific situation. Now, the bullets fired by the Gun Devil all vary in size, power, and speed, but they all mix together into one single wave of lead, shredding through most things in its path. As we can see in the different assaults we witness over the course of the story, the bullets can either be small enough to leave no visible holes when they hit, while others can utterly devastate and even rip apart the bodies with these shells. We even see a stray bullet impact and leave a massive crater in the ground with enough force to overturn cars and clear buildings in its way. Fujimoto very successfully demonstrates that when the Gun Devil acts, it feels like a big deal. And what really sells the impact of this devil's presence, as well as the utter devastation caused by its ability, is that during its attacks, the panels that are filled with its destruction and death are also listing off a massive list of names, all belonging to victims of the attack itself. And this was quite a long list of names. 884 appear within the arc itself. And some of them also appear to be Easter eggs of authors or people that Fujimoto likes, such as Satoru Nada, the author of Golden Kamui, as well as plot-related characters like Aki Hayakawa's name appearing here, implying that he was killed by the Gun Devil after forging his contract with Makima. Now, I'm almost certain that there are more references here, so if you recognize any of these names, please let me know, as I was only able to look up about 400 of the 884 names myself before I kinda called it quits, because that was a lot of Googling. Though, if you do find a name, make sure to double check the Japanese scans of it as well, because some names are written the same in English that might be using a different spelling in Japanese. As well, make sure that the references make sense for the series, as I also found Japanese actress Momo Agita's name appearing on the list. It's even spelt the same in Japanese, but it seems more like a coincidence than anything else. Though, what makes this list of names even more terrifying is that all of this death and destruction that we witness during these two powerful chapters are accomplished in the span of 7 seconds. Though, even when nearly dead and forced into a fiend form, the Gun Devil is still incredibly powerful, as while it lost its amazing speed, they are still able to level city blocks with a single shot from their arm, as well as tear people in half with their bullets. But ultimately, due to their weakened state, the Gun Fiend finds themselves on the other end of Denji's chainsaws, and turn the Chainsaw Man into a global superhero overnight. This is because the Gun Devil was the world's boogeyman in a sense, as after the attack 13 years prior to the story, the world changed, as To try to weaken the devil's power, many nations affected by its attack enacted strict gun laws, meaning that only special people were allowed to even own guns, and in some cases needed their superiors' permission to even fire them, even during deadly situations, like a devil attack. Though, this barely halted and even, in some cases, rose the fear of the devil, as everyday people feared its possible return, and occasionally terrorists or gangsters would appear with newly made guns and claim to have gotten them by forging a contract with the Gun Devil. Along with this, devils possessing pieces of the Gun Devil began popping up more and more frequently as time went on. In a way, the Gun Devil sort of became the scapegoat for everyone to blame if things started to go bad. But all these fears and all these laws and every hunter who died looking for revenge against the gun were all stemming from an empty threat, as the Gun Devil has been contained since its initial attack all those years ago, as they were defeated by an unnamed party back in 1983 or 84, and their body was soon discovered in a catatonic state somewhere within the Soviet Union. And while unconscious, the world powers took to hacking it apart and dividing the pieces amongst themselves. With 37% of the Devil being considered lost, America received 20% of the Gun Devil, Russia received 28%, 11% was given to China, and the remaining 4% was spread throughout all the other countries. This whole operation was kept secret from the rest of the world, with only a select few being privy to it. Though, even with the devil defeated, every nation involved pretended it was still out there on the loose, and used it to create these proxy gun laws in order to keep up the charade. All the while, they continued to produce and distribute unregistered guns to different groups around the world, all under the guise of making contracts with the Gun Devil, in order to continue funneling fear into their respected Gun Devil pieces. Also, these gun laws seem to be varied by the nation, as Reze points out how strange the usage of guns in Japan seems compared to what she must have experienced back at home in Russia. And because of the power that the Gun Devil wields, those actually involved with it don't seem all that interested in destroying their pieces, as it means they would be unprepared for another country's attack if they didn't destroy theirs as well. The United States was also so determined to maintain the status quo that the president, who would have been Bill Clinton at the time, was willing to sacrifice 1 year of every American's lifespan in order to prevent anyone from stirring the pot. And this whole situation seems to be designed in a way to reference the idea that prevailed throughout the Cold War, this being nuclear deterrence and the concept of mutually assured destruction, or MAD. To put it simply, the many sides of the nuclear powers bolstered their weapons and technology as a deterrence against each other, as MAD essentially helps the nation prepare if their opposition chooses to escalate things further. The Gun Devil, with it being spread across the world and being a nation-destroying weapon, is sort of a globally shared, metaphorical nuclear weapon. And the numbers at which it is divided among the nations is actually kinda scarily close to the actual world's divide of nuclear weapons as well. Of course, this is factoring in the lost 37% of them. Though, I mention nuclear weapons, it should be said, the Gun Devil isn't nukes. It's just sort of metaphorically nukes, as nukes in the world of Chainsaw Man have been erased. For now. But no matter what, the Gun Devil's role in the story as Chainsaw Man's sort of boogeyman is important to the main themes of the story, as well as creating the perfect tragic fall from grace for one of the best characters in the main story, that being Aki, though I covered that more in depth in another video about him specifically, so please go check that out. But one of the main themes of writing Chainsaw Man is the concept of Denji becoming a superhero, or an icon in a way. Elements of this theme can be seen all throughout the story, like the Chainsaw Devil's nickname being the Hero of Hell, and a big part of the final arc of the story is Denji accepting his role as that said hero. Though Denji couldn't become something great just doing what everyone else was doing, he couldn't become the Chainsaw Man, hunting devils and living day to day. Instead, narratively, he needed to be the one to defeat the Gun Devil. He needed to be the one to put the end to the boogeyman. And Makima, wanting to recreate a perfect world using the Hero of Hell, constructed a scenario for this encounter to happen, wanting to both eliminate the Gun Devil for personal reasons while forwarding her own plots, as she wanted to break Denji's spirit by getting Aki involved in the final encounter with it, so she could then offer up Aki's body to the devil so that the devil could become a fiend. Makima even goes so far to tell Denji to fight him without thinking, this way that he can can get more into the mind of the Chainsaw Man, which he struggles with at first, especially after realizing who the fiend he was fighting was. Eventually, he does as she says, and that element of the fight is represented great in the final standoff, as, after being healed by the civilians begging him for help, Denji silences his thoughts and attacks Aki like just another devil. And in a similar page-turn gag to Fire Punch, the fight ends soon after, with Denji only coming to after he has buried his arms through the chest of his former friend. And the reason that Makima wanted to build up the Chainsaw Man as this big hero for the world is she wanted to drain it of its power, and then eventually take the heart from Denji for herself, as the Chainsaw Devil would lose its power because being a hero for humanity means that people are no longer afraid of the Chainsaw Devil. He killed the gun, he's the greatest devil ever. And I like how the effects of this villain impact Denji far beyond its death. It would also seem like the Gun Devil was created in a way to sort of subvert the ultimate antagonist trope in villains, one example being Sukuna from Jujutsu Kaisen, as Fujimoto has mentioned in the past that he enjoys Jujutsu Kaisen, and Akutami has also claimed that Fujimoto is one of his favorite authors. And if you look at some of the elements of their stories, they're very similar. So I feel like these relations are sort of intentional, but this is just me speculating right now. When we first meet the Gun Devil, we learn about the flesh bullets, which are very similar to Sukuna's fingers, and they both act as a subplot for the story itself. Essentially, the protagonist must hunt down severed parts of the main body of the real antagonist so that they can kill it. These severed parts also tend to be consumed by other creatures in the world and can power them up. Though, where Sukuna continues to be an active threat in the story, the Gun Devil has most of its impactful moments happen without it even on screen, and its actual actions last only roughly 7 seconds in universe. And even with that all understood, I believe that the Gun Devil is one of the most iconic elements of Chainsaw Man, being a devil who both lives up to its own hype while also appearing for such a limited amount of time, all the while still managing to subvert expectations. And even in its death, it still leaves room for some interpretation as what's to come in the future of the series. As I mentioned a few times now, what we saw fight was only 20% of the devil, meaning that we don't know what happened to the other 80%, whether it went to waste in some storage facility, or it continues to keep on living like its constantly regenerating body. Maybe we'll learn more as part 2 continues. Now, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like it in said future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MediNotTheBadGuy. Every little bit helps keep this channel flowing as smoothly as it does. And if you want to awaken to your true inner potential and defeat the Gun Devil yourself, well, you can find that information in a copy of Shimoneta, A Boring Word with the Concept of Dirty Jokes Doesn't Exist at BuyShimoneta.com.